On November 7th, 2013, the Philippines became the focus of the world for all the wrong reasons. Typhoon Haiyan, the deadliest ever storm of its kind, swept through communities in the Southeast Asian country, devastating lives forever. Wind speeds peaked at 195 miles per hour, making it not only the fiercest storm ever recorded, but also the strongest storm reported at landfall. Before Haiyan in 1969, Hurricane Camille hit Mississippi with wind speeds recorded at 190 miles per hour at landfall. In comparison, Hurricane Katrina in 2005 made landfall with wind speeds of 130 miles per hour. The super typhoon ravaged communities, creating a global concern. Here in San Diego, it's hard to imagine such a natural disaster. As many as 10,000 people are feared dead, countless others injured, and as many as 11 million people affected by the storm. But many of the worst hit areas were in fact small remote villages whose people had little or no hope to escape the storm's deadly clutches. While the storm lasted for just a few hours, the devastating effects of the typhoon will remain forever. Lives have literally been ripped apart. The estimated economic cost of the Philippines is around $14 billion. New figures released by the Philippines government estimate that at least $8.5 billion will be needed just to rebuild areas hit by the typhoon. But through the vast swathes of destruction and devastation come endearing stories of human spirit, the eagerness to survive, the determination to rebuild, and the willingness to help. Welcome to Refocus. I'm Tristan Nichols. We have a special show for you this week. We're looking at life after Typhoon Haiyan. Now, I'm joined by two very special guests today, our friends and colleagues, Nell Cepeda and Christina Lay. Now, welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
So, take us through exactly where you arrived in the Philippines and really how you traveled to this specific area, right?
Well, we specifically went to Hernani, which is a small coastal town in the central Philippines. It's in eastern Samar. The reason why we chose that is because we actually have a local woman living in Oceanside, Josie McKee, who reached out to Project Concern International. It's a locally based international relief team, and had mentioned, look, Typhoon Haiyan hit. There's no media coverage of my town from where I'm from. And of course, for her, it was very upsetting because she hadn't heard from family and friends out there. Everyone was focused on Tacloban and all these other larger cities. So when we had gone out there, we arrived in Manila, we met up with the PCI members. And then from there, we traveled by minivan. And it was a 48-hour trip. Minivan.
In a minivan for 48 hours?
48 hours, well, including the time that we had to pull over and catch some Z's and things like that. But I mean, the minivan and a ferry and minivan, and we finally arrived.
So what was it must have been quite a stark contrast from arriving in the Philippines at that moment and taking a look at the city, I'm guessing, and the airport, to then going, 48 hours later to quite a remote area. And I mean, tell us about the contrast for the two areas.
You're right. You're in Manila, and at several points it's just gridlock. I mean, there's that much cars on the road, and several hours later, a half a day later, now you're moving and you're making this transition and you're moving into smaller towns. And so the roads now become 2-lane roads, but there's still no signs of destruction.
Could you see the effects of the typhoon over a number of hours? Was it, the area that the typhoon hit must have been quite a large area.
What happened was, as soon as we got into this minivan and we were traveling such and such hours through the rain overnight, it wasn't until we reached the ferry, got into the ferry, and we reached the other side of the other side of the island pretty much. And that's when you started to see bits and pieces of the damage, only because there were certain cities with the wind damage that had struck. I mean, there was electricity was out.
Electricity was out. You could see signage was down. You could see the coconut trees, some were blown down. It was all wind damage.
But it wasn't massive destruction just yet, and it took another 10, 12 hours for us to finally reach it, but you could tell. And I want to say that the feeling in the minivan was that it just got quiet.
Yeah, nothing could really prepare you for what you're about to see.
Everyone just got very quiet. I mean, Nell was out with his camera, and you were just letting it soak in.
Okay. So after the break, we'll take a look at their incredible story, which features a range of interviews with people directly affected by the disaster.
I think it was early Thursday morning, around 2:30. The wind was picking up. Then around 3 o'clock in the morning, the wind was picking up strong. So I turned off my generator in my house here in General MacArthur. And then I waited, and around between 4:30 in the morning till 5:30, it was the eye of the storm.
On the 12th day after Typhoon Haiyan unleashed its fury on this small coastal town in the Philippines, a woman's body is buried. She was found in the rice paddies, her hand still wrapped around the strap of a red backpack filled with clothing and jewelry.
So just to give you a point of reference, we're about 500, 600 yards away from the ocean there, and survivors tell us that the waves came up so high. In fact, take a look at the coconut trees. They say where the leaves are brown, that's as high as the water reached.
Hernani's 13 neighborhoods are now in ruins. A few structures stand, but with severe damage. Rebuilding has become a top priority for the people. At one point, the rain was a welcome sight for children who played in the puddles, and for the men and women whose livelihoods depend on it for growing rice and coconut crops. But today, the monsoon strikes fear in those living in Hernani, Philippines.
Umakyat kami sa second floor ng isang bahay. Tapos after a few minutes, may alon talaga, tapos biglang bumaba yung sahig niya.
Joey Yapi is a survivor from Barangay Batang in Hernani.
Muntik nga kami maubos. Kasi yung misis ko naipit pa yung paa niya.
His concrete home was no match against the tidal surge that swallowed and scattered most of this town in the early hours of November 7th. This is where his home once stood. Now coconut trees uprooted in the storm lay across his land, some roots as tall as he. But it's not his home he's most sad about losing.
Hindi ko na talaga nakita kasi maitim yung dagat, maitim yung tubig.
Yapi says he was holding on tight to his only child, Gian, when the first wave crashed into his home.
Minsan napapaiyak ako, pero pinipigilan ko na lang. Masakit. Sinabi ko nga dapat noon pa. Pagkasakit talaga.
To this day, the whereabouts of the 3-year-old remain a mystery. Even the boy's photos can't be found.
Sinasabi ko dapat ako na lang kinuha. Hindi yung anak ko.
For now, Yapi focuses on getting through each day through prayer. With each passing day, the locals line up at the town proper arena, where names are read aloud and relief goods are distributed. But not everyone is lucky. Goods are given based on need. But there is no rush nor fighting. Instead, they patiently wait, hoping for their names to be called.
Now, one of the major concerns, as you can see, is that the rain keeps falling, and it's not just any kind of rain, it's these monsoon rains, and folks who are living out here in these temporary shelters, or lack thereof, are literally exposed to the elements, especially with their wounds and everything else, and that's what doctors are really concerned about.
Our fear is U1 and Salcedo are near Hernani, and we have seen already some increases in mosquitoes here in town. So our problem is if we have only one case of dengue who comes here to town, then we could actually have a potential outbreak. because people could not protect themselves from the mosquitoes right now. There are no mosquito nets, there are no blankets, the shelters are open, they are exposed to the elements. So right now, that's one of our fears.
The Corderos have taken refuge in an elementary school classroom.
No more house. House broken and flood.
And cook instant noodles over an open flame to stay alive. On the other side of town, rain is a welcome sight. Families gather rainwater in buckets to be used for bathing and laundry. After nearly 48 hours of traveling by land and sea, Project Concern International arrived in Hernani, Philippines, a coastal town nearly washed out by Haiyan's destructive winds and water.
These types of disasters, because of their magnitude, requires a certain magnitude of effort. And so we're really talking about millions of dollars to help recover fisheries, rice fields, homes. And so resources is going to be the challenge.
PCI's Director of California Programs, Dr. Maria Reyes, was a shoo-in for the assignment. The Filipino-American helped bridge the communication gap, helping the people of Hernani understand PCI's long-term relief mission for the community. Some children pass the time in another water-damaged classroom, solving math problems with the help of the older, wiser neighborhood kids. Just weeks before, the classrooms were full of people who had evacuated their homes in fear of the super cyclone. Meantime, the people of Hernani are trying to forget what is now being deemed one of the strongest typhoons ever recorded, and the very little they have left.
My kitchen was here in this place. In this place was my sink.
Maridel Terencio of Hernani, Philippines jogs her memory, fitting pieces of the puzzle together now that her home is nowhere to be found.
Siyempre, masakit din. Kasi, siyempre, kahit paano, kahit ganun lang yung bahay ko, pinaghirapan ko yun.
Typhoon Haiyan took out the 53-year-old's home, but seeing Terencio alive and well brings a sigh of relief to her good friend Josie McKee of Oceanside.
When the footage came out of the typhoon, some of the people that were actually in the video were people that were very close to me while I was there.
Also safe and sound is Recti Melquides from Guian, another city destroyed by the strong winds from the super typhoon.
A part of the wall and the ceiling and the roof were flown off.
He also has family in San Diego, his aunt and uncle, Nita and Pablo Abaloyan of Chula Vista. As he mentions, the Abaloyans' home in Guian was damaged. Since electricity and communication have been down, Melquides has yet to inform them of their conditions.
We're okay here, and we just have to repair the house, the roof, so that we can go back to the house to live there.
Another local family had ties back in Hernani. Now, Troy Thurgood lives in San Diego, California, and his wife, Lita Thurgood, actually has family and property here in Hernani. And when they asked us to check on it, here's the good news. House still intact, even after the typhoon. Lita Thurgood's relatives were found inside this home.
Hindi pa ako tapos maglinis dito eh. Marami pang lilinisin.
These days, Tersing Bandilla keeps busy cleaning the house. She explains their elderly aunt, Catalina Pagaspas, and a cousin have been taking shelter in the Thurgood's home temporarily as they've lost theirs. Bandilla expresses her gratitude.
Yung bahay mo hindi nasira. Sila mamay dito sila nakatira. Sinabi niya, pag kumanhi daw yung kaibigan mo, sabihin daw nga, dito muna sila titira hanggat mayroon silang matulugan na iba. Yun lang. Salamat sa support.
Makikita mo ang tao kahit medyo nagugutom, nakangiti pa rin. Ganon ang mga Pilipino.
In a nearby town of Guion, military aircraft pick up evacuees and take them to Cebu, a sea of camouflage made up of military personnel from around the world, including the U.S., on the ground and in the air to lend a helping hand. The C-130s are a lifesaver for many and a chance for new beginnings. Others stay, their love for their town keeping them there as they begin and end each day with prayer. But not all is lost. The human spirit is strong, and even amidst the devastation, a smile and song.
Welcome back to Refocus. I'm Tristan Nichols. This week we're taking a look at the devastating effects of Typhoon Haiyan and really how life has progressed since it struck. Now, we sent a two-person team out to the Philippines to report from the scene. They were the only San Diego-based reporters from the area out there. Now, Neil Cepeda and Christina Lay, they're still here. We've just seen your incredible piece. Really, tell us, what would they... We got a sense of the emotions there, but tell us, what was it like speaking to these people directly?
It was definitely heart-wrenching. It was heart-wrenching because these are people that really started out with not a whole lot to begin with. Maridel, who you saw in the piece for one, lived in a Nipa-style style home. And she expresses even in the piece that, you know, while her home was small, it's something that she worked very hard with her husband, who, by the way, is no longer with her. So it was almost like double the whammy, because not only did she lose her husband a couple of years before the typhoon hit, now she's lost her home. And that was almost just, it was something that her and her husband had built together, that kind of life together. So it was definitely heart-wrenching.
And I'm always in awe, because when you're walking around and you're shooting photos and you make eye contact with your subjects, just in awe about how inviting they are. You know, I mean, it's monsoon season time, so it's raining every hour, and when the rain pours, it really comes down, but people motion to you to just come on over and take shelter in what little they have.
Now, is there a sense of optimism for the future, that things are going to get better? Did you get that sense while you were there?
I got that sense. I think they have no other choice but to be optimistic. I mean, when you walk through the streets, the men are pulling nails from lumber to recycle the nails. They're retrieving lumber so they can rebuild their huts. And the children are running about. You hear laughter all through the whole town. And at one point in the classroom, you saw 4 school kids, because school is closed, and one child took it upon herself to just write down math problems for the younger kids.
Is it quite a religious area that you were? I mean, were they asking themselves really, why did this happen to them?
You know, to be honest, I never heard anyone complain.
Really?
Not once. Of course they were sad. I mean, when as journalists, you're going to ask them, you know, how do you feel, how, you know, and things of that nature. But they were very quick to say, well, you know, what's done is done. Of course they're sad, but just kind of what Nell mentioned, they have to move on. There's no other way. And there are times when they would get emotional, but it wouldn't be like they would get emotional right away. It would be long into the interview before they started to show if it were tears or if it was, you know, it just, they're such resilient people. And I really got the sense that they wanted to rebuild as quickly as possible. And they weren't waiting for anyone. They weren't waiting for the local government to help them out. I mean, there were already temporary shelters put up even before the tarps came.
What would be the resounding image in your head, really, of your time there?
For myself, it's an overstanding thing with Maridel. I mean, here's a woman who's essentially homeless, and yet she spent long days working with Christina and I, showing us around. And I'm not sure how she's going to rebuild, but having us there in PCI, her time was definitely occupied, but she has, I mean, she's without a home.
So that image of her without a home, same for you, Christina?
I would say it's the children, that they were still smiling at the end of the day, and that when we had gone through this specific neighborhood where it was 100% devastated, they came and rallied around us. They were so excited and they were smiling, and they knew that we spoke English. So all of a sudden they wanted to be able to test out their English speaking skills. And so if we were even able to provide a little bit of time of hope and just, time away from all that destruction for them, means a lot. And that they were singing Christmas carols, as you saw in the piece. They were dancing, and it's just this idea that these kids who've lived through this at such a young age are going to be able to rebuild and continue. You know what I mean? I think that's the thing that really, really gets to me when I think back to it, is that they're just amazing people and so willing to help and just willing to move forward and just still smiling at the end of the day.
Thank you, Christina and Nell, for sharing your experiencing with us and really bringing to light this incredible effort that's still going on to this day in the Philippines. And thank you for watching. If you do want to continue helping with the relief effort, check out pciglobal.org. That's it for this week, but please follow us on Twitter and Facebook and join us next week for the next Refocus.